Welcome to Season 3 of Under the Sisterhood, Women Making the World Healthier. Our conversations will focus on the themes of women's health and wellness with a new episode every Friday until the end of the year. We will discuss topics ranging from sexual health to mental health while learning from the accomplished practitioners who make women's healthcare possible. This is a podcast to celebrate women and all they do in our world. I'm Elizabeth Elfenbein. Let's get under the hood. Today, we're getting under the hood with Myra Kinds, a mother, daughter, sister, wife, friend, minister, trainer, facilitator, and community champion. Myra is a Jerry trainer and BIPOC intersectionalities leader. A licensed American Baptist minister, she serves as the minister to youth at the People's Baptist Church and serves on the advisory board at Gordon Conwell's campus for urban ministerial education. She is a recognized leader in underserved communities, specializing in youth programming, addiction and recovery, mental health, and domestic violence. She holds numerous training certificates in mental health first aid, recovery coaching, and trauma first responder. Myra collaborates with the Black Ministerial Alliance and Mentor and consults with faith-based groups around women in ministry, youth, and gender-based violence. She is also a contributing author to Gender Equity and Reconciliation, 30 Years of Healing the Most Ancient Wound in the Human Family. She is an international consultant on gender equity and reconciliation, and her work is grounded in her commitment to healing, belonging, equity, and the betterment of people. Myra believes in the transformative power of mentoring and that it is an act of love and action, not perfection. She knows that everyone needs someone in their corner. Wow. Welcome, Myra. What an intro.
You know what? And I absolutely hate intros, but thank you. And thank you for having me. We are both here the day after the big holiday. And so I give us credit for that alone.
So I ask and have asked this question of every woman. And I think it's while it seems like a trite question, talk about your journey. I think what's really interesting is we all have different inflection points in our life. And so something happens to us, and then we start on this path. You have a very interesting story to tell. I would love for you to tell our audience of when your journey to becoming the woman you are and doing all the incredible work in supporting community and mental health and wellness has happened.
It is very interesting. I think I told you the story that when my mother had me, there were 6 boys that she had birthed before she delivered me. And when she brought me home, my brothers told her to take me back, send me back. The great news is that in that household, I learned that I was just one of the beautiful beings in there. And so there was never this issue or question for me of whether I was loved, whether I was inferior or superior. I was just a part of the contribution of what the world was going to have. And the interesting thing is, I didn't know that I was different until I left to go to school. I left the house and I couldn't figure out, like, why are people treating me different than my brothers? That began the journey because I knew what unconditional love was. And it wasn't just from the house and a mother who loved us unconditionally and she raised us on her own. I also knew what it was to love and accept myself. And so that began the journey. But in that journey of being raised by this beautiful 5'3" little woman from Savannah, Georgia, we saw and experienced a lot. And so during the course of our childhood, you mentioned that I'm a minister. One of the things that my mother did make sure that we had in the house was a father figure. And that father figure was God. And I used to have tea parties in my closet with Jesus at 6, talking to him and making sure that I listened to who he said I was, but also I found that there was safety and validation. And I grew up seeing things that a lot of children that I work with and youth that I work with see today, but feeling completely protected and knowing that I was not journeying alone. Fast forward, my brothers and I grew up I made it to high school. I graduated from high school. A week later, that beautiful 5'3" mother collapsed, and 12 weeks later, she died. And so all of that journey from that tea party in the closet with Jesus to being 17 and a graduate of high school, I was now looking at my mother dying. Um, but everything that had been poured into me, I knew that I wasn't journeying alone. And so, without going into all of the full stories, because I'm sure we're going to be chatting, all of those things that had been encountered, the fact that I was still telling and could tell my story is what prepared me for doing life in a very different storyline than I thought I was going to be doing. And when I went into ministry, the whole thing was making sure that if there was any other little boy, a little girl, or even a single mom out there that had a similar story, that they knew that there was hope. And so that is the main part. There's a verse in the Bible that goes, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish." I'm a whosoever. I believe in him. And so to that end, and God gives us a choice. So it's not about trying to make everyone Christian. For me, I'm out here to find the whosoevers. For anybody who believes they can't make it, I'm here holding that hope balloon. I'm a hope dealer. And so I get into a lot of places, sit at a lot of tables, just making sure that those who might not have the voice, those who may not feel they have a voice, and those who are on this journey feeling alone, that I help tell their story until they're ready to take it over themselves.
That's beautiful. And thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry to hear that's like such a young and it's such a tender age to begin with, the age of 17, where you're just about to embark on potentially leaving your home, maybe going to school or starting your life journey outside of home. And then to have something like that, to lose your mother who is that safety, that love, that everything. And so I'm really sorry to hear that. But to the point of the inflection point, that really drove you and that sense of calling was already in you. So good news is that she helped give you and prepare you with that sense of calling. When all of this took place, what was your journey like, in your late teens as you embarked on becoming a minister? Did you go to school? Like, how did you what was the process to getting you to where you are?
So in that last year with my mother, she did not disclose that she had had cancer. And as I had learned after her death, that the cancer had actually been there many years before. And knowing my mother had surmised that she decided she was going to raise her children on her terms. So that was probably one of the biggest things, and very much like my mother. And so I had been accepted to all of the colleges and universities I applied for. And what I didn't know that because of her illness, she had not or wasn't able to do the paperwork for financial aid and all of those things. However, I did go off to school. I actually went to school in Massachusetts because she was not well. And on that 12th week when she passed away, I left school. Um, then I went back to school and realized, and I then turned 18, that it was just too much. And I figured again, um, I knew who I was. I wasn't going to go live with another relative, though all of my relatives loved and adored me, that this meant that God had a different plan, because it was my intention to go and to be an attorney and to help those who needed a voice, right? And I was going to buy my mother a house. I was going to buy me a house because she had raised us and now she needed her own home. Um, that journey lasted for a little while, and I wound up getting an apartment as a teenager. I'm not quite sure how I did that. And then for the next less than 20 years, continued to rise up the corporate ladder, working for the city of Boston, doing programs under Mayor Flynn, and then taking on jobs in corporate America, only to realize one day that all of the work that I was doing was important, but the most important work that I was doing, managing people and millions of dollars, was the fact that people were coming into my office to talk about life and where they were. And so here I am. The last job that I had in corporate America was with Fleet Boston, and AVP. And we had gone through several mergers. If you were a part of MASH, you knew that we were Bank of Boston, then Bay Bank, then Fleet Boston. And there was another merger coming, and I got a call on the phone, and it said, Myra, we're going to all be meeting in the office tomorrow. There's been another merger. And they're like, what are you going to do? And in that moment, I said, I have 3 children under the age of 5. How am I going to teach them obedience if I'm not being obedient to God? And so I said to the person on the phone, I said, I'm going to be a minister. The next morning when we sat around the table and everyone's going around, what do you think? How do you think we should proceed? And they got to Myra, and I'm like, I'm going to be a minister. And so then there was this pause.
If I can just interject for 1 second, if you're that person that everyone's coming to with their life stories and challenges, and you're absorbing and sitting there, I would imagine that the response would have been like, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it was hilarious because the other part is because we had gone through so many acquisitions that there's always a question of, will we be a part of the team that proceeds, or are we on our way out? Right. And every time we had gone through one, obviously I stayed on and got promoted and on one of them. So I wound up closing down the call center, which is where the area that I worked in, and went to my pastor and said, I want to work with the young people and the families in the community. Never told him I had a call on my life. And basically it was, whether you say yes or no to me doing it in the church, I'm going to do it anyway. So that began a part of the ministry of the whosoever. I think it was there before, but now there's another layer, because as I shared with you in our previous conversation, there's no part of me that I leave behind, right? So, we're in the community, I'm in the church, I'm walking amongst the people, not, I am neither higher or lower. I just wanted to make sure that they had a journey person walking alongside of them. And so that began that work there. And I've been doing that since 2000, but then there have been now layers adding on to it. I have also worked with the Black Ministerial Alliance, where I would run a network, or where I ran a network for over 10 years, bringing community providers from all over to sit together, who don't typically sit together, and put the young person in the middle of the table and say, how do we help them? But not only how do we help them, what do we do to make sure that we are prepared and taken care of? Because one thing that I know, a lot of people, at least that I've worked with, that does the work, they have their own backstory, right? And
Yep.
and some of them may not have had the opportunity to share or understand the self-care component. So there's I guess the best way to describe it is a bridge, right? Standing there and making sure that all of those parts, all of those intersections had a space to come home. And this time home, if it hadn't been healthy before, was an intention on making sure that, Ubuntu, we're all in this together, we can.
I love that. And it's such interesting, as you said, there's so many layers to this. There's so many, the whosoever, like walking alongside people in your community, not on top, not below, but with.
Right.
It's an extraordinary gift, because it puts aside ego, and it's really about being and feeling the pain of the community. And I think that as I'm connecting and hearing you tell your story, I'm thinking about the work you do on youth programming, in mental health, on, domestic violence, and on addiction. It would be great for you to share some of that experience. I would imagine having someone like you in the room by my side, if I was going through any of that, would be really powerful. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so first of all of those labels that we put on a piece of paper um,
Fair
are
enough.
are people's lives, right? And so for me, whether I'm acting in a particular role, it's not the label, it's the person. Like I'm not going to say someone's name on screen, but I'll ask you this question, and I've asked it before, and you don't have to answer. But like, what does a person who is considering suicide look like? Right? Are they walking around stressed out? Are their lives in shambles? Can you tell? And the thing about it is you never know because this is a person that considered suicide. This is what she looked like when I had lost my mother. And in my case, I wasn't distraught. I just missed my mom. And at that time, my brothers who were breaking didn't know how to reach me. And I thought, I'll just go be with Ma,
Mm.
right? No one, not even at a Christian college, saw that. And so, even though obviously I didn't go through with it, right? I had started, and that voice from that closet when I was 6 years old spoke to me. When we are working with people, humans, you never know what they're going through. And so, what it looks like when I'm working with folks, it's all about the relationship. It's not asking the question, oh, how was your weekend? And waiting for a yes or a no. But it's more of, oh, what did you do this weekend? And, what's going on in your life? And so it really is building relationships so that you can be present. There's a ministry of presence where you just sit. And there's also just that opportunity where, I take the moment just to look in your eyes and say, what's going on for you right now? Now, that could be hard for some people because they've never had that asked of them and somebody really wanting the answer, right? But the other piece is, though, then they recognize that, wait a minute, she really wants to know. And so, in the work that I've been fortunate to do, it's not just Myra. My goal is to help support and hopefully create threads where they will do the same thing for someone else. Right. So in the ministry, I work with a lot of young people. And over the past almost 23 years, some of the first ones that I work with me now, helping me with the young people. We go out and we serve the homeless. And some of the biggest lessons are look them in the eye. Don't just walk past them. Touch them if you're comfortable with. We even had a foot washing where we did. And I remember, imagine telling a teenager that we're going to wash feet. Imagine telling an adult. And they were at first, we want gloves, we want this, we want that. And when we did the exercise, there were no gloves. They just wanted to touch the people. And so, what the work looks like, if you know, because I recognize that everyone doesn't, if you know what unconditional love looks like, that's what it is. And if you don't, if you're touched by it and there's some kind of transformation, that's what it looks like. And then, if at the end of the day you're not ready to receive it, but we put a little print on you, that's what it looks like. So it's not that I do such great things. I mean, it's real easy. I'm only giving back what I know, you know. I know what it feels like to be loved. I know what it feels like to feel like you're invisible, right, to the world. I know all of those things. And the last thing that I would want to do is have someone else feel that way. So if my presence and the folks that I train can also feel and give that away, that's what the work looks like. Whether it's the label of mental health, whether it's the label of addiction, it's letting you know that you are not a human doing, you are a human being. And for that alone, we are just so glad that you're here. And then I'll just say this, the other piece for those of us who have had really tough stories, I would say I am so glad that you're still able, that maybe I can help you tell your story than someone telling the story over you.
I think when you show up and you do that kind of work, you are role modeling behaviors that future generations, so the young people who you've been able to touch, literally, metaphorically, like being in their sphere and seeing someone like you guide and lead and behave certain ways helps them recognize those moments where, back to your comment around unconditional love, it's just like you showing up and being that way, being a very, generous listener, looking someone in the eye and being an active listener, which is where you're asking questions, but, careful not to, put opinions in there and stuff. And I think that just, that's role modeling. It is a label, but like this, that's leadership at the, like the highest order on the most human level. So it's like, you're not back to to your earlier life when you were in a career in the corporate world and manifesting, and everyone came to you because you were that person that they felt that they were seen by and heard by, so they wanted to come in and share. It's interesting when I think of you now. Here you are, you said 23 years later, doing this work where it's just pure unadulterated, like touching on humanity, if you will. You mentioned the word self-care. What do you do? Like, how, Myra, for you to show up in this way for your community, for your community at church, but for your community at large, for all the people that you are touching, like you've got to be doing something within, that inner work to be able to show up and give that level of energy. What do you do?
The moment I realize that I'm awake in the morning, I choose joy.
I
No
love
matter,
that.
no matter what will come. And then I talk to my Father in heaven, and basically turn the day over to wherever I am supposed to be, whatever I am supposed to say, regardless of how it makes me look. I am here and available to do that. So that's the first thing. The other thing, and I have a smile on my face because some of my folks in Jerry will tell you that's true. That's true. I always have music in my head. Like I sing, right? I grew up, my mother and her brothers had an a cappella radio program in Savannah, Georgia, and I grew up listening to them and then eventually singing with them. And then when my mother passed away, I took her voice between my aunt and uncles. Um, I have a playlist that is constantly going, and let me tell you, I mean, it is very diverse from Barbra Streisand, Aretha Franklin, Patti LaBelle. I mean, there's no discrimination.
Oh,
And so um, that's been a constant theme in my life. Music has been one that has supported me. And it's also been one where I have ministered to others. At one point, I was the funeral singer, just because while I didn't necessarily like attending funerals, it was, if you've been given a voice that makes someone feel better, then
mm,
you have to say yes. And so, when people ask me to sing, I will sing. So the self-care is recognizing those things in you that have helped you and then sharing it. The self-care is remembering that regardless of all that I might encounter in present day, remember what I've already come through in past days, and, remembering that I didn't do it alone. Um, and then when I encourage others, I have all kinds of creative things that I do. So like in a group, I go, okay, um, think of something in your life that makes you happy, a favorite memory, a favorite scent, something along those lines. And everybody gets it in their head. And then I might say, now I want you to remember that throughout the day if things get a little hectic. Remember to smell the flower. Remember the baby that was learning to walk, fell down, but then got back up. Remember, when you first fell in love, like you don't have to finish the memory, you just capture that memory. And so I try to help people identify self-care techniques. The same with, you know, picking, is it a dandelion, right? And you look at it and then just blow. or bubbles, or flour, smell the flour, just different things that they can do. Small, and then there are big ones. But the good thing about self-care is that, nothing against spas, but you don't have to go outside and spend a lot of money, because what you're recognizing, or what I hope to teach folks, is that you have all that you need right here. Even if, and I'll end with this one on the self-care, if you put out your hands and you stretch them in front of you, and you look at your hands and recognize those hands have touched so many people, might have held babies, might have, been gentle to an animal. And you look at them, now wrap them around yourself. And that same love that those people have received from those hands are the same love that you can get from your own hands when you might live alone.
Mm.
Or you might be in an office or somewhere else. So there are just a lot of different self-care techniques. And again, we're using labels, but things that you can do that might help you soothe. I'm also a rocker, so sometimes I just rock.
And it's interesting because I do think, to your point of waking up in the morning with joy in mind, gratitude. For me, it's gratitude and joy. It's a choice, and I think that just looking at that glass half full is just such a positive way to both begin your day, and it's one of the most positive forms of self-care.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great one, because looking at the glass half full, well, guess what? Even if it's empty, that means I can fill it.
I think that's awesome. It's so interesting, these conversations. I feel like in a way, every conversation I have, Myra, I feel like my glass is over, or my cup is overflowing. And so the feeling, because connecting with women and hearing these stories and the amazing things the way we go through life, our challenges, the way we come out, and we not only are we resilient and we thrive, we come out from these obstacles that life offers everybody. It's really how you show up and deal with them. And it's just been amazing to hear all of the different stories and get under the hood and just experience like that cup full, that full cup. And so thank you for letting me say that. But so your story and how you are today, I mean, what I found in our first meeting before today was just this level of intimacy, of really being present with the person. I felt you were just really there. I felt this connection on a spiritual level, that was just like, wow. And so I think that that's a real gift, being present that way. And you said that, like, you were having tea parties at age 6 in the closet. I mean, was that something, holding space for people? Was that something that, I mean, you were doing it, of course, at the bank, but at what age did you was that just something that naturally, this was Myra, who she was as a human being, and it's been honed? Talk a little bit about that, because I think it's such a gift.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of holding space, that's been all my life. There's always an extra seat at the table. There's never, I don't have enough, so I can't share. So that is a common thread with me. And I know that comes from watching my mother do the same thing. Like, materialistically, money in the bank we didn't have. But if people showed up at our door, if someone needed a place to stay, we made room. And not from the standpoint of making anyone feel as though they were a charity case or had to reciprocate in any way. So that's what I knew. And watching, in many instances, the transformation in people's lives, I knew that that's what life was about. Right now, you say, well, 6 years old in a tea party, but it starts with the tea party is with dolls, and I still collect dolls to this day. Um, it then began that you always make more than you need when you're having dinner, or you always make sure that during the holidays, if you know someone that doesn't have anyone that they can go to, or maybe things are just a little wonky in their biological families, they can come and sit with us. Um, it's making people not feel different, but making people feel included. That has been a natural journey for me. And the young people in the case of the ministry that I've done, it's been predominantly single moms, making sure that they know that they're included, right? But not only just included, but there's so much more that they can do. So, we talk about the labels. It's not about what you have attained in life. It's what you bring to life, right? And so whatever it is in your story, you bring that, you put it on the table. It's, today's the first day of Kwanzaa, right? It's about community and families. You bring and you share it because there's someone there that needs what you have that you might not even need anymore. There's a saying that I say was some of my kids, that there's somebody somewhere waiting for you to do what God has called you to do, right? So if you just tell your story, and really the word just shouldn't go in front of it. If you tell your story, there's someone there that's going, wait, that's my story too. And they find something. And if nothing else, they see you still standing. And then that gives you an opportunity to go off to the side and build relationships. And sometimes relationships are for a season. It may be a month. It could be just that day, but the memory and that change could, last a lifetime. And so, that's the thread. You don't have to remember my name, but I definitely hope that you'll remember my touch.
It so resonates with me, Myra. I grew up, I mean, my parents were divorced, so I grew up with a single mother, I guess, who went back to college. She quit school to marry my dad at 20, 20. She had 3 kids at a young age and went back to college and became a social worker at 35. To give you context, we had an open door for anybody and everybody. We didn't have means, but my mother always made room for other people and showed us it's like such an interesting parallel in a different kind of way. It wasn't godlike for us. It wasn't a religious thing. It was just how we operated. I mean, my family and I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, because here we are, it's holiday season. We're thinking about, how grateful we are in life, the things that have happened in our lives and the impact of each thing and showing up. And I think it's really interesting. This whole conversation is really about the being and showing up as a human for others in such ways that, so it's like you've extracted all of the external material world and really focus on the internal world and being present for people. And so it really, really resonates with me. I hear this and I'm just like, I feel so much. I feel very emotional right now because this is work. It's such important work. When we recognize these things within, we're able to show up in society and be better for humanity. And to your point, whether you're teaching the youth that this is God's work, that it's going to point you in a certain direction or not, just the being able to show up as that better person each day and mirroring these certain behaviors puts out that wonderful energy into this world, which we are in such desperate need of. So I really thank you so much, and thank you for letting me share. You're very clearly you are what you are because you are who you are, which is amazing. So this journey you're on, so here you are today, Myra. I know you continue to do this work every day. When you look at the bigger, being part of the Jerry group and authoring that book, talk a little bit about your experience there. Because I thought that was a really interesting thing. The group actually reached out to me and
Yeah.
wanted me to feature one of you. And we agreed that Myra was the person, because of just who you are. So I would love to know more about your contributions to the Gender Equity and Reconciliation book.
So before I give you the answer, I just want to say, as we talk about parallels, my mother also was a social worker.
Oh, I mean, I'm just like, yeah, and I can't help but like this is such an intimate conversation today. And by the way, not such a perfect conversation to end the year with this conversation because I think, it's a time of reflection at the end of the year going in and looking within. And so, no, your mother did an amazing job. I would imagine your brothers are pretty fantastic too.
I
Um,
look, they're my first boys. I love them. Now to go to the question, when you mentioned it, I wanted to like stop.
okay, thank
Um, so the Jerry work. So I had been doing ministry, and I had actually been offered a position at a faith-based organization to run a network that worked with young women who had been trafficked, human trafficking. And I turned the position down because while it was a great position, it was just very focused. Here you go with the labels on them being trafficked, but didn't at that point um, make enough space for how did they get there? Like what was the story? And so I started talking to the person that was offering me the position, and she just stopped me and she said, wait. She goes, can you do a consultancy with us? Can we talk more? And I said, yeah, because here's the question that I asked her because it was faith-based. I said, you know, before I get to the question, it's always interesting to me as a woman that when I go to the doctor, the first thing they ask me before I even see my doctor is, do you feel safe? And then
yeah.
you can go into the bathrooms and you see this little sticker, do you feel safe? Call this number. I need to find out where are the safe spaces. And then, especially since I have grown up in the church, ask the question, are our churches safe space? So, I'm on this journey, no easy feat. I'm looking at all of the scandals and all of the various conversations around faith and safety. And the person that knew me that I was doing a consultancy for sent me a flyer about this organization called Gender Equity and Reconciliation International, who created this safe space for men and women and people of all beings to come together to disrupt the patriarchy, right? We're going to heal together. So it had all the right words for me. It had reconciliation,
Mhm.
right? It had people of all orientations. And I said, okay, I'm going to go. A 3-day workshop. And I went on the first day. And by maybe half, 3/4 into the day, people from all over were sharing parts of their life in this group of strangers on a level that people don't share in their own families. And I said, okay, they seem to have the secret sauce. And I wasn't there to critique it because I was a participant. So then I went and I spoke with Cynthia and Will, who are the founders of Jerry, co-founders. And after the first day through the third day, by the end of that, they're like, would you consider coming in and being a part of our training program? And I said, absolutely. And so we formed what I call sort of new arms to the family, because I call them my family. And when we were talking about what areas we might work on, the area of BIPOC is what I introduced. I said, because with all the intersectionality, I said, when I came through that door, I left none of me behind. I said, but sometimes in settings, people aren't comfortable sitting down and bringing in those other pieces. So people, if they're in a setting, a person of color, that happens to be the minority, not because they're a person of color, but because they might be a few in it, may not be comfortable sharing on the level of some of the experience that hit them differently because of that intersection, or a person of faith might leave that out. So between the Black Indigenous people of color and the intersectionalities, both of those parts of me, because they're very important to me, because when I walk through the door, people see that, I've been kissed a little longer by the sun, you know, and that I am a woman, right? And so to help them feel comfortable, I bring all of it, but I also invite others to bring all of them to me. And so gender equity and reconciliation, affectionately known as Jerry, is that space where anyone and everyone is invited to come in and to share those very difficult conversations and how the patriarchy, the socialization of these bodies that we live in has impacted us. But it's not just a space where we tell those stories and we recognize that sometimes the world and people can be cruel, but it's a space of healing, of bringing it from the darkness into the light. So, there's a saying in Jerry that it's not therapy, but it's therapeutic. Jerry is the biggest space of ministry of presence that I know. It's interfaith, so it's not Christian. And I do want to go back. I remember actually when you were talking, reflecting back some of the things that I had shared about the young people that I work with in the ministry. My ministry is not um, limited or about making people believe, because I can't make anyone believe in God. It's about anyone and everyone. So it is not, it is to raise up, and some of those leaders may choose a different path, but we still pour in love and that into them. And so Jerry is interfaith. Anyone and everyone is accepted. And we do it through workshops. It's international. I'm actually going to Kenya in March
Oh,
to do
wow.
a trip. Yeah. And so to that end, we come from all over the world and do these workshops. Typically, not typically, there's always at least four of us, two women, two men, very diverse teams, and we will lead trainings and bring individuals in. There's the Jerry workshops, and then there are the Jerry tasters, where people can come in a smaller setting, maybe two trainers to experience what Jerry feels like. But it's an amazing transformative strategy. It doesn't stop there, because obviously if there was one way to do it, then we would look a lot different. But it is the beginning of a journey of healing if you choose to take that journey. We don't leave you, we'll bug you as long as we can.
Do you feel, and it's interesting because I'm just responding in this moment, hearing this, like, so, you have such a strong sense of just who you are. You are such a present and I talk a lot about generous listening these days. So when you're in someone's company and you feel that they're with you, they're present with you, you're there, you're feeling it with them, you're hearing them. What is it about Jerry? Is it Jerry does some of that from a healing perspective when you talk about these workshops? Like, is it, and I would imagine you started to say that people are sharing their most intimate stories. Um, is there like a moment? Is it just the sharing that brings out the healing, or is there without getting into the secret sauce, which of course
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious because it sounds amazing.
So this is what I always do when I get that question. First of all, I would like to personally invite you to a taster so that you can experience what is an example of Jerry. Now, how we do it is we do all of that. There are moments, there's sacred listening. Um, what Jerry is not is that we don't preach or teach healing. And so to that end, as you go through exercises and as you are together in larger groups and then put into smaller groups, to talk about those tender parts of your life, and then facilitated and held by the trainers when we're in full plenary. That is how it starts, right? There is never a point where um, you put someone out there. As a matter of fact, the whole foundation of Jerry is that it's an invitation, right? So there's not the pressure of that. First of all, I'm coming and I'm going to have to tell my story and every part of it, and then everyone's going to be sitting around looking at me. No, it's an invitation. The part of the secret sauce that I can tell is, just as we talked about the pre-Jerry Myra, is that the trainers and the facilitators, we are constantly in processing mode. And so it's not like, we tell the same story depending upon the activity that we're doing. We process together. We hold space and hold the workshops and the individuals together. We mentor the participants. Once they get in the training, we're checking in with them. So that's how it's done. There's never a point if for some reason, because we do it both virtually and in person. COVID obviously expanded our world virtually. That we feel like needs additional support, we address it right away and make sure that they are not sort of out there trying to process, or if they've been re-triggered, out there again spiraling. We have a counseling team. We have, again, the lived experience right there, and we offer those supports as well.
I love that. And I think what's really interesting, Myra, just hearing you suggest that couple things, like if someone isn't and doesn't want to do any of that inner work, they're not going to show up for any of that. So they're not going to join the Jerry experience, whether it's the taste or whether it's the workshop. So that won't even happen. So you sort of, to your point, it's an invitation, but you choose as an individual to accept the invitation or not. But the second thing that I really heard, which I find very interesting, is that it's process driven. And when you're in the process, so it's not like there's a rote, you pull up 5 slides, this is the process. This is about lived experiences in that moment, because the truth is you can't really duplicate. There's things that are duplicative, but there aren't, it's when you're dealing with intimate experiences, you have to be in that moment experiencing that thing with that person or people. And so I think that that's really, really interesting. And I'm really happy I asked you that question. That's I look forward to learning more about this and maybe to joining one of the sessions. I don't want to end this conversation. This has been such a heart-opening and soulful conversation for me personally. You're an extraordinary woman. I love the work you're doing. You're really touching lives in a meaningful way, really meaningful way. This is your opportunity, Myra, to give a message to women around the world, of all backgrounds, of all cultures, of all ages. What do you want to tell them, Myra?
All women, all cultures, all ages, that the world would not be the same without you. That the fact that we have been born female, or feel that female presence is a gift. And no matter what culture you are a part of, no matter what your story has been to date, the strength of a woman, there are no words. And that's not to say that men aren't powerful and amazing, but that we do this together. And so we are not at the bottom of anyone's feet or anyone's list. And if we are, the next time you just rest your eyes, just remember that I am enough, that you are enough. And remember, even if you haven't met me, but because you're watching this tape, remember that there's someone out here holding the hope balloon for you. And that truly, I do love you.
Thank you. That's so beautiful. And thank you. That's a wonderful message. Yes, the world would not be what it is without you. So I think that's just such a beautiful end of the year message. I am so grateful for this time to have gotten under the hood with you, Myra, for all the amazing work you do on behalf of humanity. Thank you.
To be continued.
Thanks for listening to Under the Sisterhood. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn so you can hear from more amazing women. This podcast is created and hosted by Under the Sisterhood LLC and Elizabeth Elfenbein, produced by Elizabeth Elfenbein and Matt Butler, and edited by Matt Butler. The music is by Ayla Schaefer. Her song, Rose.